Welcome to another episode of Revenue Leaders Uncovered. Super honored to be joined by Alex today. Alex, if you can introduce yourself and your awesome company.
Yeah. Alex McManus. I am a co-founder and CEO of Eyrus. We founded the company in 2015, really to provide kind of in broad terms workforce management and kind of field intelligence to the construction site. So I've been in the construction industry my entire career, and really we were focused on bringing some visibility to what's happening on the site and then using that visibility a lot into the workers and who's there and what they're doing to help manage the site and then also provide data to help kind of manage your portfolio. And so on a very high level.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, look, it's super cool space to be in this construction world. Absolutely booming part at the moment as well. What would be awesome to understand is what makes you guys unique versus maybe one of the competitors in the space.
Right. So I think first and foremost, we really come from a background of meeting the needs of the construction site. All right. So I think that mentality is understanding that the teams that are on site are there to build a project and not manage technology. And so we really tried to develop a platform that is easy to use and provides value back to all the users. Because what you're going to find out with technology is there's going to be a myriad of different users on the site, right? From site administrators to superintendents, project managers, safety personnel that are going to interact with your platform. And so our goal was to provide everybody value back, actually even the workers, right? So that it's a good experience to use the technology versus an additional work that they have to do. So really we're trying to save everybody work.
Definitely, and it is an interesting space. So when you're selling to the construction world, that you've got people that are used to maybe the legacy softwares and everything like that. So usability is huge. You don't want something when they're on the site getting confused, not
Yeah.
wanting to use this application. It's got to be something that's quick, efficient, portable. It doesn't require a lot of brain power to use.
Yeah.
They've got plenty of other things they need to be worrying about. This is meant to be something to help them and help them manage their projects to be better, and obviously run more efficiently. So that
Yeah.
usability part, I think, is where sometimes this is why, I mean, I used to place construction managers or project planners, and they would turn around and go, "Yeah, I just quite like using Excel."
Yep.
Simply because of
Yeah.
the simplicity of it, that they know how that works. It's very simple, and that's what people want. They need the project to be simple so they can focus on what's important, actually building the project itself.
Yeah, it was. It's an interesting point you bring out about like Excel. So I think what we have to do is create additional value, but also right. If we do workforce management on site, right? Superintendent, project manager, they need to know for how many people are on site under what roles on a particular time.
Mm.
All right, but that's their need. Right, but then maybe project controls person needs to tie that back to schedule, right? Maybe the site administrator really needs something that helps them onboard the workers faster so that they save time, right? So we're really looking at all those individual pieces so that that worker that's touching the platform at that point is going to get some value back. Safety personnel, right, who also are going to interact with the site, they might need to see fatigue reports, right? And maybe they don't want to log in. Maybe they want it directly sent to them. So we do that. And then on the other side, the nice thing about Excel, because I still like Excel,
Mm.
right, is I know how to use it for different applications. Right.
Mhm.
So if I just want to do some quick addition of subtraction, great, I can go in Excel and it can service that. If I want to go in and do a big financial model, great, I can go into Excel and financial that or do that. Right. So what we really focused on too on a platform is let us bring you the tools that you need for the project that you're on.
Mm.
Right. So if you look at Iris on a big data center project where we're tracking, hundreds of subcontractors and thousands of workers, they're going to use all of our tools. Right. And we're going to be able to layer those in as they need them to have a lot of data accuracy and kind of operational detail. But right. So that's my big financial model in Excel, right? If you're a worker and you're a superintendent and maybe you're running 5 workers on a site and you just need some basic information about when they got there and when they left, right? We
Mm.
have that tool for you too. Right, so that's something we really, really focused on is bringing the right part of the platform for the type of project a worker's on or a superintendent or project manager is on. So you don't need this big complicated package,
Yeah.
right, to get, yeah, who's on this site, right, where I have 5 people. And if you have a site with thousands of people and you need to track security and bathroom doors and you need 3 levels of data information just to get into a server room, we have that too. So that's really what I mean when we're focusing on the folks in the field building, is that we have a platform that works for the different scenarios and then the different people across the project.
I love that because even if I just relate it back to the work I do in recruitment, that there are so many tools out there for now candidate applicant tracking and
Yeah.
everything like that, and they provide loads of data and there's
Yeah.
tons and like, okay, fine. If you're doing on a massively large scale, then I get it and it's fine. But let's say you're working with me as an external recruiter. I'm a one man shop. I can
Yeah.
use Google Sheet. I can put down all the
Exactly.
details you need. You've got the folders, the resumes are there, and it's very straightforward and simple. And actually, sometimes I think that's why people work with a company like me. Will save you time, and save you effort. You're not going to have this massive tool that costs you a fortune. That sometimes the usability is a little bit difficult. I mean, sometimes when I join a company to work with them internally to support with all their hiring, they'll give me this software, and I go, really? Like, what are
Yeah.
all these features? Have you even looked at any of the reporting of like,
Yeah.
are you looking at the fill rate? Are you looking at how many interviews to hire rates? Or do you even give two craps about any of that?
Yeah.
Likelihood is no, they care about hiring the right person for the role. And they'll leave that all the rest of the other stuff down to me. And so I love the fact that you're focusing on the people's needs
Yeah.
versus, okay, this is look at all these cool gadgets and gizmos that we can give you that 90% of them will never be touched or used or just cause confusion to not want to open the application in the first place.
Yeah,
Um,
and so what are you gonna use the data for is incredibly important, right? Because there's no
yeah.
point in collecting it if you don't need the output. So
Mm,
we do some really fun, I mean, I love technology, but I also like efficiency. So we do some great fun things where we're tracking real detailed data and information because it's gonna be used to understand productivity and to create a forecast for the next project, right? Really neat stuff, lots of algorithm, lots of tying in data together. But for the most part, if you don't need a lot of data and information, then let's not have people do extra work, right?
mm,
So I I went into my it's totally unrelated, but I went to my gym the other day and I brought my friend, right? Because I'm allowed to have visitors, right?
yeah.
Right. So I said, okay, I need to sign her in. And so the first thing they said is, oh, she needs to download an app. Right, and so she's immediately annoyed, as am I. I'm like, "Why does she need to download an app? I have the app. It's my
Mm,
account, right? I'm just bringing her in. I'm sure she needs a waiver." Right, and so and I was like, so that kind of that same concept. Well, and then we had to spend 15 minutes for her to download an app that she's immediately gonna delete and then wonder why it's on her phone. Right, so the
yeah.
same thing. If you don't need a lot of information on the trade workers on site, let's not have them download an app or fill out a form. Maybe let's create an easy way that they can do a QR code check-in or a text check-in, right? Or
Yeah.
just give them a card and check in on the kiosk. If you need all of that information because it's going to go into payroll, then let's use information that you already have in your system and bring it in, right? If you have an HR type system, right? Or we'll collect the information and send it to other databases so that the worker doesn't have to keep filling out a lot of different information to do the same thing or information that's never going to be used. I'm a massive data efficiency fan because I
Definitely.
don't
Yeah.
like to
I
waste
think it's
my
so
time.
important. Well, it's so important. And I was chatting to a guy the other day, is a British guy, runs a contact company. And one of their solutions is sort of looking at inductions
Yeah.
and basically speeding up this whole induction process of the can we give it to them prior? Can we give it to them? Because what you're saying is we get all these contractors coming to a
Mhm.
construction site, spending a whole day doing an induction
Yeah.
to then maybe last working there a month, or there's something like
Yeah. Exactly.
11 million inductions a year, which is costing a whole day of work. Think
Oh yeah.
about if you could basically reduce that and get that out of the way and it's done in no time, whatever it be, well, the amount of money you're saving with that. And
Yeah.
it's all of, at the end of the day, with any construction project or whatever it is, it's about how can we be cost effective? How can we be efficient? there's a lot of things, if you can remove these remedial tasks out of the
Yeah.
way, you're going to be way more efficient. You're going to save days, you're going to save millions in some cases.
So induction, so it took me a minute there. So you're this kind of registration and onboarding of the workforce, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So we do that. So because if you need to, right, our whole initial premise is understanding who's on site when doing what, and that ties into the entire kind of value chain of the project, right? So we're on projects where there's 5 workers. Quite simple. We're on projects where there's thousands of workers. All right. So what we've done in our platform is again, and that's largely to the site administrator, right? Is we do I call it registration and onboarding, but
Yeah.
inductions. All right. So and then we create all these mechanisms so they can make it as easy as possible, right? From bringing workers in from another system because they have an HR system that they're using, or doing remote registration, right?
Mm.
Or having an app if they need it, right? Or yeah, doing registration on site with a kiosk. And then because they have remote registration, they have training, right? So we have an entire right training system, so you go in, you register on, you can do your training. We can make sure they watch the entire videos and answer the questions, right? So this is all really to make life easier to bring these workers in. So, I mean, that's why I say when we have a platform, we have a total kind of workforce management platform to bring all the workers in, right? And then communicate with them, send environmental information, send weather information, right? Because they're that same database that you already have. But yeah, so I'm with you. It should be as efficient as possible to bring these workers in, meet the needs that you have, track their registrations and their onboardings or certifications. You don't need 5 systems to do that. Right? And then you're going to go do the same thing to bring them in through an access control system. No, you need one platform to do that so they can build. So anyway, that's yeah, same focus.
Definitely. Well, no, obviously, really interesting spot. And if anyone's interested, then definitely reach out to Alex. I'm sure she'll answer any questions. Um, where I'd love to take the conversation is a little bit about recruitment.
Okay.
So I'd love to understand what your method of madness is for building the right team.
Alright, well, it took us some time, but I think I we just had a company meeting the other day, and it's actually very heartening, right, to, like, see that the team we built over time. We are a tech-focused company in the construction industry, and I think, those 2 features kind of come into our, how we run the company. So in my mind, I've always been in the construction industry. The reason I love it is it's very tangible, right? You have hard workers. It is not a business where you can go in and 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 say, "Not my problem," right?
Yeah.
If you're there, you're engaged and you're doing something at every level, right? And so I think we bring that kind of mentality into our company. So we're pretty lean. We started we've been at different sizes, and I think lean is definitely the way to go. But we're very service oriented, so internally and externally. Right. So I think it's really important. Hussein Shokami and I, my co-founder, right, try to meet the needs of our workers where they're at. We're 100% remote company, which is really fun. That predated COVID, by the way. I
So you weren't part of that whole buzz that suddenly
No, no,
you
no.
already
So
proved that it worked. And I,
yeah,
I mean, it's interesting because a lot of companies now are going the opposite way.
yeah,
And because you're probably pre-COVID, you'd already worked out that it was a method that you could do.
yeah,
But I mean, personally, for me, if I look back a year ago, probably 80% of my clients were remote first companies. I reckon quite comfortably now, 80 to 90% of them are now back on site.
no, yeah, yeah.
It's it's a massive flip.
So my background was much more in kind of management consulting in the construction kind of tech industry, and so then you're really with your customers.
Mm.
Right. So we have a very centric, customer first kind of mentality. So, we want people to be interacting with customers, right? If you're in the operation side, we want them on site, right?
Mm.
Even the folks building our software, right? Go out and talk to the customer. So that's first and foremost where we are is the first kind of for us, right? The first job of everybody is to meet the needs of the folks in the field. And it just in that same mentality, they're building. So let's make sure
Definitely.
that our system is supporting them and then turn around and let's support the needs of of the company itself. Right.
Definitely.
Um,
I think that's super important, especially when you're talking about maybe at even the engineers, the product engineers,
yeah.
whatever they be, actually speaking to the clients, seeing what the issue is, seeing what it is. And actually, I did a LinkedIn post on this, I think 2 weeks ago or something, that I was chatting to a software engineer. First, he's been in the contact space for quite a while. First question he asked me, do the software engineers go and meet with the clients? And I can tell you for a fact, but I normally play salespeople, but we've been
Yeah.
dibbling dabbling with software engineers, and I've never had a software engineer ask me that. But for him, that
Yeah.
was crucial. He was like, I need to be able to speak to them. If you want me to fix a problem and you want me to build something for them, I personally need to understand what they want
Yeah.
and why they want it. Not just sitting there looking at a piece of paper going, okay, we're building this, but
Yeah.
actually having a genuine understanding so I can provide an input of maybe how can we make this better. And I think that mentality is exactly what any startup that's building a software for the construction space needs because
Yeah. So if you look at some of our feature sets, I won't bore everybody with all the details, but I would gather that 70% of kind of some of the products on our platform just came out of needs from the field. Okay, we understand all our workers, we understand where they are on site, we know who's here. All right, we need an emergency evacuation system. I mean, we've had it for years, but that came out of we were on projects in the Midwest, right, where there's a lot of tornadoes.
hmm,
They were like, "Why can't I use your system to do that?" So we're like, "We can." So we built it really fast, and then we built this really cool interactive emergency evac that actually saves. I mean, that alone saves a massive amount of time and money to manage people on site. And then what we noticed is our customers were then using that same system to tell everybody there was like, and I'm not like cake in the lunchroom, or somebody moved their car, right? Because it had the communication module and they
yeah,
had everybody there. So we said, hey guys, how about we now just build you something else, right? That can then you can communicate with everybody over
yeah.
here and save the emergency evac for emergencies, right? So we but all of that just came from our team interacting with the customer. So something about right, and this is where the kind of customer centric focus in our culture is that if you're a salesperson, right? And you're out meeting with the customer and you're understanding their needs, then you can bring in our head of product, right? You can bring in our data engineer, right?
Mm.
Into those conversations to say, okay, here's what we need out of the information. Cause I guarantee you have the data and the information, and now it's just an output that they're looking for to make that done. So I'll speak for my sales guys. I think they see a lot of value in that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah,
I
because we're
mean,
trying to solve their problems and not necessarily just sell them something.
well, exactly. I think that's sometimes the hardest job as a salesperson. A client wants something, but is it genuine? Can we actually build it? Is probably the other question. I know for most salespeople, they'll be like, "Yeah, it's
Yeah,
fine. We can build that. That won't be any issue." But as long as you've got the software team there and they're actually communicating with them, okay, we can't build exactly that, but we can do this. And how does
yeah,
that work?
yeah.
And I think no, at the end of the day, you're putting the customer first. I do love the story about the cake. I think that's absolutely brilliant.
That's a
But
true story.
I was just thinking too. But I mean, I suppose in a sense, it makes
Yeah,
sense. You have WhatsApp broadcasts and stuff like
yeah.
that for contacting people. Again, it's probably very similar. You're building the WhatsApp for construction in a sense that
Yeah, yeah, we have
broadcasting private messages.
and now it's very refined, right? Which makes sense. So we know, right? Do you want to send a message to everybody that's on site today, or just this type of people, or everybody that's ever been on the project, right? So now you can refine, who you're sending it because we have all that data that connects in, right? So it is really about just making everything run better. So I don't know, I guess a little bit more about our culture, but back to that, like you need to jump in and roll up your sleeves and do things because we're lean. I like it. That's the way I've always been. So instead
Mm.
of somebody being siloed, which I think you can get, we're going to have our team members talking to each other. And because we are remote, right, that is just a big focus of ours is this cross discussion to make sure everybody understands what everybody's doing and how that affects right? The customer and their job, obviously. So we like people that are a little bit more broad
Yeah.
in their viewpoint of things, right? So younger workers, right? That takes a minute.
Yeah, and that's probably why a lot of companies in the UK for graduate recruiters will
Mhm.
never let us work remotely,
Yeah.
just because the level of trust or communication. And I think that's something that that I think is a burning question for me is, and probably helpful for other companies maybe that are wanting to go fully remote. How do you go about managing the communication or creating those channels for people to communicate effectively when working obviously on a remote scale?
So you have I mean, we have all the tools, right, that are
Yeah.
online, right? So you have your Teams and your SharePoint. I mean, we're Microsoft based, so there you go. Just
Yeah.
plug just where we landed. All right, so we have all of these communication channels that we can work on. We do try to do, you know, a lot of virtual meetings, try to do 1 or 2 in-person meetings, but then now this is something we're just starting, and I think it's important, is my job, my role, I wanna get everybody out into the field.
Mm.
So then here's the trick. How do you do that and not bother your customer, right? Because
Yeah.
that's, again, a big, kind of value prop of ours is to add, right, we're there to help them. But what we've started to do is we do, which is some folks we need. We're starting to help do some people on site, right? So gatekeepers, site administrators, laborers, right? So that gives us right. It adds value back to the customers because, well, in the U.S. here, depending on what you're building, there's a lot of projects, there's a lot of need for just help us get these projects staffed. So we're like,
Yeah.
okay, right, we have basically our software is going to be used to do the registration and onboarding. You want people to do that? Fine, we can do that too. Or you can do it yourself. Either way, we've designed it to be total, right, easy to operate. But if they want us out there, we'll do that. But then that gives us the opportunity to have people out there to train them. All right, so we'll stick them out there on site. So they're actually doing what our customers are doing, right? And seeing how a construction site works. Um,
Definitely, and also pointing out any issues that maybe they're having with the software and getting it
mhm,
firsthand, which
yeah,
is the most valuable information you can
yeah,
have. I mean,
mm,
we do it in the recruitment industry when we do, I think it's like called RPOs or something like that, where we will embed a recruiter into an org. They go and work in the office with the company,
yeah,
and straight away you're seeing what the issues are, what everyone's saying about the recruiting
yeah,
company. At least then you can action everything extremely quickly. It's something that I do personally. It was something I was trained very early on. When I place a candidate, I will continue to talk to them for another 2, 3 months until the rebate period's done. Because if I can get hold of one whiff of maybe an issue they're having, you can stop that person from potentially leaving or just addressing that matter before. Because unfortunately, when you've got a new member of staff, a lot of the time they'll keep their issues to themselves, and then
yeah,
you might end up losing a really good person because of one stupid thing that maybe was missed when it was coming to the negotiations or whatever it be. Um, but yeah, it's why I love the fact you're doing that. I think it's brilliant.
and then so I think we went through at some point and we did right did a whole internal kind of we brought in somebody outside to us to figure out what our internal values are in our and what we basically came out with curious, dedicated, and transparent. So to that point, we really, really work on transparency internally so that hopefully, if somebody does have a concern, right, you got to put a lot of energy and effort to this, especially when you're remote, because it's right that they feel comfortable bringing it up, right,
Mm.
and being able to work through things, and we show a lot of loyalty, and then our team members show a lot of loyalty back. So that's again, I think those are all values that come out of construction as well. So,
Loyalty is one thing that half the reason I do this context space. I think I've mentioned you before, but I used to do cybersecurity, and
yeah,
it was just such a dog eat dog world. There was no loyalty. Suddenly there'd be multiple agencies working, and you're like, what's going on here? I thought I was doing a good job, but actually with the contact or even construction, you do a good job, you're a client for life or a partner for life.
yep,
They're not going to bin you off. But as soon as you do mess up, oh, you'll know about it. That's
yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. And then because it's such a small industry, everybody knows. So just make sure you never mess up, then you're all
Feedback goes both ways, right?
right.
Good and bad, right? But that's all right.
Yeah, definitely. It for sure does. Where I'd love to take the conversation, obviously you mentioned always been in this construction space. I'd love to know a little bit about the journey of everything that led up to obviously starting Iris.
Okay, so from my background,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, so yeah, I started out mechanical engineering in the U.S. And then actually just my own personal history. I was running around looking for jobs, and I was like, man. a lot of engineering work is like really sitting around at drawing, right,
Yeah.
doing AutoCAD at the time when I came out of school. I was like, this is really boring. I want to get out there and
Yeah.
and be doing things. So I found my way to a very small company that grew over time that was really focused in, it's called the Gordian Group, but it was using data and software to kind of reorganize large portfolios of construction. All right. So, how do we manage information about the project? Right. I mean, almost a little bit like Procore, but it was very specific Procore geared towards more municipalities, government agencies, a lot of school districts that have very specific requirements. So before Procore, and this software now is ubiquitous in pretty much every organization in the U.S. So we started small, it went pretty big, really fun. So it was a chance to get out there and make immediate impact and then on both sides, work really closely with the customers, bring in data and software, make it fit their organizations, right? Really
Mhm.
important. So I bring that mentality back
Yeah.
to Iris, right? So that's a really, to me, management consultants, that's what you're doing. You're working with your customers, trying to make something, improve their process, make their lives easier. And then it had the other side of seeing the immediate impact. Now we would be doing, thousands of construction projects to see the results of this in the field. Right. So you're
Mhm.
working with the customer, you're seeing the results in the field, which I always loved. So we thought we were, and I think we were the best at kind of helping manage construction programs up to the construction site and then all the change orders and closeout. Really, really good at that.
Mm.
What we really lacked was any understanding of what was happening in the construction site. So I did this work with the Gordian Group for a decade plus. Went out and was like, let's started dabbling in some more startups and entrepreneurial stuff, which is definitely in my blood. And then I met Hussein, my co-founder, and from my perspective, I was like, we just have this black hole of information when something goes to the construction site. So how do we bring transparency back to that site? And Hussein came from architectural project management, build big projects all over the world kind of background, and he was like, data, data, data. We need more information. So he said, okay, let's understand what's happening with the worker on site and go from there. So we really started, focusing in on understanding, and that has a lot of risk management. It has a lot of project management and then safety, actually, and kind of value back to the worker themselves. So let's understand who's on site and what the role is and how that's going to impact the project. Right. And so
Mhm.
we do a lot of IoT on site, right, to get some of that data. We also can do an app-based software too. But what we do is try to create as many options as possible for that meet the needs of a construction site to collect that information and go from there. So in 2015, I think we're a little bit early. Construction is not right the earliest adopters of technology,
Mhm.
but we've been working with sites since then to make it like find the best ways for the construction site to gather this information and then use it. And how does it fit within the site dynamics, right? To get the data out that they need, right? From registration and onboarding to safety and insurance information while things are going on, to tying communication, emergency evac on site, and then all the changes and claims that they have at the end of the project. So I don't know. Does that?
Yeah, that definitely answers the question. And it's an awesome journey. And I always like asking this question. It's just super interesting to hear how different people get into starting this company. And it obviously always leads back to seeing firsthand an issue that there was. I had a guy on the podcast yesterday, and bizarrely, his career started working in theatre. And he was
uh,
a director of plays and theatre, and suddenly started a non-profit, which then led to him building theatres for disprivileged kids to get into. But because of that, they had a civil part of the business,
yeah,
which then led into him then understanding it. And then now he owns a 3D concrete printing company.
so
Um,
cool. Yeah.
I was like, I didn't know any of this going into the podcast. And I'm sat there going, like, trying to wrap my head
Yeah.
around this. Yeah, honestly, I find it absolutely brilliant that everyone's got these different journeys, and it's just about in this construction context space, it's about really adding value. And I think that's the strongest part about this context space and why it's never going to struggle, continue to get investment, continue to grow. The $12 trillion industry that where you're solving real life problems versus some little AI gimmicky tool that might help me get one more meeting every month or whatever it be.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
and yeah, to that point, it's really fun, right? We were like,
mm,
okay, data, let's capture data, and then you're in really we understood this, but it's amazing how quickly it grew to like, wait, okay, but we have to make it easy for them. So let's create
yeah,
this tool, right? Now right now they need to right. So you're creating all of these tools to add the value, but then also because we're out on a site, they're like, oh, can you supply us with some people? Right, so then all of a sudden you're in a slightly different business, which is actually really fun. And,
mm,
actually, could you just bring us some more IoT? And actually, could you do some turnstiles too while you're at it? Because it makes their lives easier. So it's actually really fun to see. Not quite like theater owner to like, 3D
no,
crate
yeah.
builder, but you find yourselves in especially if you have the entrepreneurial mindset, which is something else we really want from our team, right? All kinds of different ways that in things you can get into.
Definitely. You definitely find yourself in a situation where you're now a service provider of such.
Yeah.
You are providing a
Yeah.
service of like, let's do this, let's do this. And I think that's what's great about the model that you've built as a company, of that you can offer more. You haven't siloed yourself
Uh,
into one specific part and you've got, no, look, we can do this and that's all we're doing. That actually, no, do you know what? We've got the great team. We've got a great team of artists that can build pretty much anything within
yeah.
reason. But we're going to make sure that we're putting our customers first and making sure that their projects move efficiently and we grow as a business off the back of direct data of what people need versus what we think they need. I think it was Steve Jobs who said the completely opposite thing, that he would build whatever he wanted
Yes.
without actually without actually considering the client. People are going to buy what I want them to buy. But what does he know? Hey,
I mean, and there's a
yeah,
place for that too, right?
mm,
And there is, I mean, we do go through on the technology side, right? Right, you have the input from the sales team, you have the input from ops, the customer success, right? Here's what they need. And we have okay, here's this very specific need. I need to tell people when there's cake in the kitchen, but
yeah,
actually here's this broader need, right? So we do run it through a lens is what we need
yeah,
to build is a communication module so that
yeah,
they can organize who's getting information when. And so not
yeah.
everybody on the site hears that, right? And so we do run, yeah, obviously run through a filter that says, okay, here's what this customer needs, here's what everybody needs. And
Yeah, taking the
they
raw.
didn't know, right? Like
Yeah.
now, Steve Jobs, I mean, visionary, obviously, he knew everybody needed, to see me have music digitally and a really, really small, and nobody else knew that, right? Yeah,
And whether
but
we did,
yeah,
probably didn't, but it was just but that's the consumerism side of things. And obviously, this is
yeah,
the value add sort of side. But yeah,
yeah,
I love what you guys are doing. I think it's super cool. Well, I'd love to take the conversation, and it's just to finish off the
yeah,
podcast, is a little bit about work life balance. Obviously, running an org, building an org does take up a lot of time. Um, how do you juggle personal life, building the org, if you can juggle it? Any advice
yeah.
is always welcome.
All right. Well, this is just a funny personal story about me, but I actually because I was doing management consulting, right, and you have to in that world, right, and we were at that point, national, and you move up an organization. I was traveling all the time, and I had 2 kids. All right, so I said, you know what? Let me instead start a business because that will make more sense. I really
Mm,
did look at it as a way to grab a little bit more control over my time. Right
mm.
now, there's some that works and it doesn't work. Right, so I have some more control at times.
Yeah,
Right, and then not at other times. But what it enabled me to do too, because I was traveling so much, was to try to get myself a little bit more home. Right, so I still
yeah.
travel. I'm still out there, but I get a little more control over my schedule. So actually, starting a business was my solution to creating some work life balance. I'm
Mm,
not sure my kids would agree. It also has the benefit of they're very involved in what I do, right? Because when they were younger, sometimes they had to be out there with me.
Yeah, very
Now
true. And
now they're my kids are older, so it's a little
I
bit
think it's
easier,
great.
but
They're probably proud. They're probably proud to see their mum growing something awesome, and I think there's no better feeling. It is partly why I started my own business and kept it so small, is that I have that flexibility. Whereas when I started my career, I worked for 3 or 4 years for this quite large recruitment agency, and you were in the office 5 days a week. If you wanted to go to the post office in your lunch, they made you take a
yeah,
half day off from your holidays. Like it was one of those environments where we were in 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. 5 days a week, where you had to prep on a Sunday as well. Well, I left that place having 3 panic attacks a week near
yeah,
enough. I was a
yeah,
broken shell. Went in young, confident, quite arrogant, I suppose, to suddenly being a person who could barely step outside because he was just, I got to work, I got to work, got to work. I still have that mentality, but at least now that if I want to go and sit on a beach in Dubai and do my work, I can.
yeah.
Or if I want to take an evening off to go out with my girlfriend, then I can. But yeah, it's everyone has their different reasons, but I do believe that yeah, having your own company does give you that flexibility that
Yeah, and
entrepreneur
we
side does.
do try to push that through, right? So there's an expectation, right? So if I have to run and, pick up a child or take him to the
Mm,
doctor, right? Well, my team knows this, but I'm up at 9, 10 o'clock at night looking through all the data, right? But so I can,
mhm,
you can organize things. And I think that
mhm,
the world has moved that way anyway, but it wasn't
yeah.
that way when I started this, right? I'm going to take care of everything that needs to be taken care of. And what we try to do is impart that same kind of, uh, value back to the team members. Right?
Mm,
So, it depends on the role. Some people have to be available all the time,
yeah.
but then that's working together so that we make sure we have the right coverage and the overlap, right? Because we have to but so we might need people to be up when, and available and accessible early in the morning, right? But there's a dead period during the day. Great. Take care of it and be there, right? Because that's when people are getting on sites. Right?
Yeah.
And then you get some time in the middle of the day, and then you have to be there when stuff ends at the end of the day, right? So we try to just impart that flexibility for all our team members. Don't I mean, they know, got a lot to do, but
Yeah. Don't be
it's like
messaging now asking for 3 weeks off work when there's tons to be done. But no,
yeah,
and then I think it's so important. It is right in this day and age that that's what people are looking for. These core values of understanding of that stuff comes up where there's stuff's needed. And I think it's very I think this is one thing I do love about the US that actually a lot more companies have adopted it there than maybe in the UK. Of that, I speak to a lot of salespeople, software engineers that they go, "Oh, I pick my kids up on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9 o'clock, but we
yeah,
start work at 7." But my employer is fine with that because they're allowed to work from home those days or whatever, and they
yeah.
pick them up after school. Whereas the UK isn't as much. I don't think they're as open to that. Of the no, you make somebody else do that, or one of you works and one of you doesn't. But actually, the US have accepted that actually both husband and wife, or wife and whatever it be, married couples, both of them might need to work, and actually being understanding of that people want kids and everything, which I think is brilliant. The companies are adopting that, and if they aren't, then I mean, you're probably going to struggle to hire, to be honest with you, because it's a strong thing that people are looking for from a recruiter standpoint.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it depends on it. Look, there are some jobs, right? If we have a gatekeeper or site administrator on the site, job
You
is to
sort of
be
need to
there,
be there.
right? Like, and that is the way that works, right? But
Mm,
there's other jobs where the job is to, not necessarily to spend 9 to 5 in the office, but to make
mm,
sure we accomplish certain goals. Right? And then that's with the management and the communication, right? So, and then if we have transparency, and I'm always on the calendar. I see everybody's calendar, so they just say that's what they're doing. And if it's an emergency, I might call them anyway, right?
yeah.
But otherwise, it's you just try to be respectful of people's goals. But I also know that our engineers are up sometimes up at midnight because that's when we push software updates because it doesn't impact the
Ex-
system. So sure, take your kid to school at 9, right? Like,
yeah,
it's
exactly.
just
And
a balance.
I think it's the side of as long as you're making the outputs and you're getting your job done of whatever your job entails, then that's the respect and trust that any CEO, employer that they should be looking for. I think it's something that I didn't have in my first role, but when I went and joined my mate's company prior to me starting
Yeah.
mine, that he was just like, "Mate, I don't care when you're in the office, just do your job." And I
Mhm.
went, what do you mean?" He was like, "Well, bill money, make me money, and that's fine." And I was like, "All right, if that's fine, I'll start at 10, I'll finish at 10." And actually, it was lovely because I could do my stuff. I had better output. I'm performing higher. And it's something obviously that, again, that's what I've adopted in this. And when I do hire, I'll be the same. I'll just be like, not here to babysit you or mummy you or
Mhm.
whatever it be. You're here to do your job. And as long as you
So
do it, that's all you can ask.
that's the other side, and it's a pretty high expectation. We've had, we talked about remote work. We've got a lot of people that don't do well in that environment. So what I've
Mm,
gotten much better at is recognizing that early on.
yeah.
Some of it you cannot know when you're going through a recruiting process.
Not at
So
all. Mm.
I always say like I like to do the kind of, at the end of the drug commercials, there's the disclaimer. Like, all right, here's all the
Yeah.
bad things about that dynamic. But
Mm,
only that person I'm talking to, they know if they're going to fit in that environment. Right,
mm,
so here's everything that can suck about, right, the structure you're in, so everybody sees the good side, right?
yeah.
But, you have to be pretty self-motivated. You have to be kind of problem solving by nature, right? So, where you don't just sit there and wait then for somebody else to come and solve a problem. And right, you really have to look at the world that we're in holistically. Right. So I'm trying to get people out so that they can have a visualization. I've been doing this for a long time. It's easy for me. But there's a lot of downside to that if it's not the right person. And I think people think they're the right person and then they realize they're not.
You,
It's
it's
tough.
a,
Yeah. Well,
you
it
just
is
need
the value of that of the role you have because it is really hard. We have a very, right, hard time. And then what happens, which isn't great either, is then we're gonna go and we're gonna hire people that somebody knows. That's what I did in my other company, which works out great, but I don't think that's necessarily from a getting more ideas into the room, right?
yeah,
And
definitely.
and to even finding the best candidates, the right approach. But
Mm,
that's what happens if you don't, right? If you can't weed through everybody out there, right? Which I think you have a recruiter that you can really trust to help through that process, or you end up, right, really kind of in the end, I think that constricts your kind of the information you get in your company because you just go with people right? So that's the outside of it. And not just a little bit broadening the scope of it, but when we have all this ability now with even AI and all the web searches, you get so much inbound. There's no way to look through it all. And so we
yeah.
posted positions before and we just get overwhelmed and we're like, forget it. Like we don't even have the time to go through. Because you
Yeah.
have, and I get it. I have my kids and my nephews, right? They're applying for hundreds of jobs, right? But did they use the word tapestry? Sorry, that's an AI
Yeah.
love. ChatGPT loves the word tapestry. So if I see that word, I mean, they might have changed. Like, I'm like,
It's
okay,
it's
that's been fun.